Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Hello, you who are made in the image and likeness of God. Hi, thanks for dropping by this video. This is part 4 in my journey to Christian Universalism. Just a brief recap. In part 1, I shared an experience I had as a teenager where I renounced Christianity but held on to my love for Jesus. And then I shared about my understanding of who Jesus really was. And then I shared about being guided to the idea of Christian Universalism. And then I shared about learning about Scripture, and that if you hold the two next to each other, Christian Universalism and the idea of damnation, salvation for some or damnation for others, that Scripture actually supports Christian Universalism more than it does damnation. And then I shared a little bit about history. Let's see, I have a little. No, Brandon, I'm not reading this. This is someone asked if I'm reading, and nope, I'm just I do pretty much everything improv. Well, I ask the Spirit to speak through me, and hopefully it does. And studying about the history that early Christians were Universalists. So that's what brings us to this video, which was my next step forward. So I'd intellectually accepted the idea, but it hadn't fully sunk in yet. I don't know that it's to this day fully sunk in yet. And so the next part of my journey was an amazing video, and I'm going to share it here by a YouTuber. She has a channel called Love Covered Life, and it was just, this video just opened my heart up. She was raised very conservative, I think a Calvinist, and then she had her own journey to Universalism. And I don't want to ruin it's an amazing video, and she's just I just feel like she's a really earnest person and very well studied, much more versed in the Bible than I am. And she just she doesn't quite conclude with the statement God is love, but that's a pretty central theme that she talks about. And towards maybe 3/4 into the video, I just had this feeling, oh my God, God is love. Like, it wasn't up here, it was like a feeling, it was like a knowing. And it just broke my heart open. And I was like, this woman's telling the truth, and not just telling the truth about Christian Universalism. This person's telling the truth about God. God is love. And I shared a little bit about this, who I consider to be the greatest Christian of all time, Bruno Gröning. And Bruno would say that God is only goodness, that God is goodness, and that he said love is God. But here I had this moment of experiencing it, that, oh my God, God is love. And there's no way that love could condemn anyone forever. So it was just a moment of knowing, of beyond knowing. It was like soul knowing, not mind knowing. And yeah, it makes me really happy to reflect on it. And I really had a feeling of trusting that, oh, I can trust God. Like, in the end, everything's going to be okay. Like, God's got me and everyone. So very powerful video. Highly recommend it. And then the next step in the journey for me was learning about this word, the gospel. We've heard the gospel according to Matthew or the gospel according to Luke. Well, actually, those are really misnomers, because basically what it's become is the gospel means like, oh, it's a book or something. But actually, if you trace the origin of the word gospel, uh, it goes back to this cool old English word, God's spell, which goes back to a Greek word which means, I think it's evangelum, which means declaration of good news, declaration of a victory, or declaration of a change of leadership. And then it finally hit me. And it's written that Jesus called his message the gospel. And that's why I don't think it's accurate to say the gospel according to Matthew. I think that's a complete misnomer. The gospel is like it's good news. It's declaration of a victory. And it also, again, means declaration or pronouncement of a change of leadership. So when I learned that, I was kind of shocked because, I was like, the gospel according to John, the gospel, da-da-da-da-da. But to really get it, what is the gospel? And here's the gist of it. Jesus called his message the gospel. So what is the gospel? Now I'm going to share in a moment what my understanding of what it is, but I want people to really take this to heart. Jesus called his message, he didn't call it the gospel because he didn't speak English. He didn't call it God's spell. He didn't speak Old English. He didn't call it evangelum because he didn't speak Greek, but he called it something in probably Aramaic, possibly Greek. Maybe he spoke Greek. We don't know. That people translated into this word, which means the good news. He called his message, his teaching, and he went about preaching the good news. See, to call it the gospel, it loses all its power and meaning. But this, Jesus went about preaching the good news. Jesus went about preaching the declaration of a victory. Jesus went about preaching a pronouncement of a change of leadership. This is so important because it puts the whole message of Jesus in a completely different light. And it also gives us a criteria. It gives us a criteria for how to look at. So, what is the good news? What is the declaration of victory? What is the pronouncement of change of leadership? Well, it's my understanding, and it's early Christians' understanding, that this good news is called the final restoration of all things. That God would be all in all. That God would wipe away every tear. That everyone and ultimately everything will be reconciled to God. Said another way, that suffering will end for everyone and everything. And once you understand what the word gospel means, once you really get it, not just up here, but you get it in your guts, you cannot believe in eternal damnation anymore. Because that's very bad news. That's a declaration of failure. So that was the next corner I turned in this journey. So yeah, brother, I can't carry on a dialogue in the middle of a broadcast. I responded to your message, but thank you. So let's see. Yeah, this is a live broadcast, brother. Let's see if there's anything else I want to say. Yeah, once What's the meaning of the word gospel? And that's why I don't even call it the gospel anymore. I call it the good news, or I call it the declaration of victory, or the declaration of a change of leadership. That changes everything. Because if it ain't good news, it ain't the teaching of Jesus. I should write a book. That should be a book title. If it ain't good news, it ain't what Jesus taught. Now, it may not be comfortable news. Jesus said, in essence, the gospel is, the good news is that everything will be okay in the end. That doesn't mean the trip there is going to be bump free or comfortable. And, some of the things we have in, I don't even want to call them the gospels anymore, because again, I think that destroys the meaning in the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Jesus does describe some bumps that could happen in world history, and some bumps that could happen in the individual journey. The way I think of the good news, the gospel is, my understanding of the gospel is the final chapter's been written, and everyone and everything works out. The happily forever after for everyone and everything. So please do your own research. Find out what this word gospel means. See if I'm telling the truth. And then ask yourself, if Jesus called his message the good news or declaration of a victory, is it good news? Is it a declaration of victory if most people end up in hell forever, tortured, not just in hell, not just like hanging out, but tortured forever, and or annihilated, while a select few get to have happiness forever in heaven? That sounds like a tragedy to me, the exact opposite of good news. Thanks so much. Appreciate your wanting to dialogue, brother, and I this now isn't the time. Thanks so much.